Good morning for Peter Stroud, Councillor Stroud, but I think we might as well start the meeting and get some straightforward things out of the way. You probably are aware that we have two new members on the committee, Jane McFarlane and Haley Smith, and we often ask new members to say a few words about why they're interested in this committee, what their background is, so perhaps you could do that.
Well, I wasn't prepared for this, but that's fine. I've been a resident of Kingston for many, many years and always been interested in historic properties. And I had decided that I was interested in the building trades as well, and became a student at St. Lawrence College and took their Carpentry General program. And because of that, and because of my interest in heritage properties, and the fact that we actually own one now made me interested in being part of the Heritage Kingston, and sharing some of the expertise I've learned over the years, and also contributing to the Kingston community. Thanks.
Haley?
Hi, I am relatively new to Kingston. I went to Queen's for geography, so that is where my interest stems from. I am from Guelph and live in a heritage property in the Guelph area, so I have a little bit of knowledge on the subject. And yeah, I'm just looking to grow my network and learn a little bit about the city of Kingston.
I see that our chair is here. Turn the chair over to Councillor Stroud.
Perfect. And perhaps Greg may wish to introduce a new staff person as well.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone, and through you, Mr. Chair, my pleasure to introduce a new heritage planner, Alex Rose Thompson. So she'll be supporting the very heavy portfolio of work that we have, and we certainly welcome her to the city.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, for starting things off. We need to approve the agenda with the addendum. Have we discussed any other changes? Does anyone, before we do that, we need a mover and a seconder, and then if anyone wants to propose any changes. Yes, moved by Catherine, seconded by Dawn. So the question is, does anyone want to change the agenda as printed? Seeing none, we will approve the agenda with the addendum. All those in favor? And that carries. Did Dawn introduce any?
Yes.
Okay. I see the introductions were done. Hello, I'm Councillor Stroud and I'm the chair. Sorry, I was a bit late. Okay, so we'll keep moving. We need the confirmation of minutes from the last meeting. It needs to be moved by someone that was here last meeting. That's January 17th. Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Dawn. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we will vote to receive the minutes from January 17th. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Disclosures of pecuniary interest. Yes, Matt.
9 Street, I'm not currently working the project, but I have worked on it the last year or two, so I'll just excuse myself.
Okay. So that's the 8th item under official business. Any other disclosures? Seeing none, keep moving. No presentations? Are there any delegations? There are no presentations, delegations, or briefings on the agenda. So we're now on business. Business is separated into 4 categories. The first one is cultural heritage. And we have an item here, civic collection acquisitions, souvenir booklet. There was some information in your package, and I believe staff will want to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. This is a proposal to accept into the Civic Collection a souvenir booklet for the City of Kingston dated 1902. It is one of the earliest tourist documents that we have to add to our archive of resources. And it also is one of the earliest references to the tag of the city for the limestone city. So we can accept this into the collection. We have capacity, both budget and spatial, if you will, to store it safely. So that's the recommendation being brought forward today.
Okay, would anyone on the committee like to ask any questions about this item? Seeing none, we go to members of the public. No one wishes to speak. So there is a recommendation here that Heritage Kingston recommend that council accept the souvenir booklet, A Souvenir of Kingston, the Limestone City, 1902, as an acquisition for the Civic Collection. So kind of a formality, but it needs to pass council to be accepted. So we will vote on the recommendation. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Mac, seconded by Pat. Does anyone wish to speak? Okay, well then we'll just go ahead and vote on it. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Sorry, we move quickly sometimes with the votes. If you want to say something, it might have something to do with the fact that you have some concerns with the item, and then we would have some discussion before the vote. The next item of business would be policy development and implementation. It's empty this month. Then it's heritage assets, and those two items, those are our two city-owned museums, and they're empty this month. And then statutory business is item D. It always has items. It has all the heritage permits, the grants, and other items of business. That is statutory business, and there's also some non-statutory business in this area, and you'll hear more about that as we go along. You've had some training, the new members, about the Part 4 and Part 5 applications, so each time an item comes up, I will remind the committee which rules apply, because the rules are different depending on what section of the Heritage Act applies to the application. So the first application is 251 Main Street in Berryfield. And you'll see the pages in the package. You'll see the recommendation here for us to discuss. And this is a part 5? Part 5. So we'll remind you about those rules in a minute. Go ahead, Mr. Leary.
This is a property on the west side of Main Street in the village of Berryfield. It's 251 Main Street. It is designated as part of the district, Berryfield Village. The property contains a number of buildings that are relatively contemporary to the district. The house was built originally in 1975. It has had a series of additions to it. There's also a boathouse on the property that was built in the 70s as well. This is the view from Main Street in the district. So the application before this committee is to construct a one-story detached garage with a side gable roof and a south-facing dormer to replace a shed that was recently removed from the property. The building is proposed to be clad in, so this is the location of where the building is to be set. It is down the hill from the road. That's looking back up to the road. So as I mentioned, this property contains contemporary buildings, so there's no built heritage per se on this property. That was constructed in 75 and added to in the 90s, but there are views along Main Street, the views down to the water and such that are part of the natural character and heritage rural atmosphere of the district. So the building that's proposed, as I said, is a simple side gable with a dormer. Two-car garage. It is to replace a building that was there. This will be slightly larger at 50 square meters and 5 meters tall. It is lower, of course, than the house, and it is set back off to the north part of the property. And is minimally visible from the road and should not impact the views from the Great Cataraqui River. We did our assessment of this property, and overall, we support the structure. One item that we did note was this oval opening in the gable, which we noted as a bit of a departure from those typically found in the district. So we have spoken with the applicant on this, and we are recommending that the window either be omitted from the plans or replaced with a rectangular or square type vent or window opening. And the applicant is open to considering this suggestion, so that has been included as a condition, a recommended condition. The proposed garage was reviewed against the policies of the district plan, and the proponent, working with staff, is taking measures to ensure that these policies are upheld. And stemming from our review, we are going to recommend approval of this application. It was circulated to our usual agencies. The only comment that we received was from Utilities Kingston, which reminds the applicant to get locates before they excavate. We circulated to this committee through DASH, and no major concerns were received. We did have one question came up regarding the siding of this building. The plan makes it look fairly busy. It is a cedar shake type material. But we are assured that it will be a pre-finished wood and will look similar to vertical siding from a distance. And there is actually a picture in your agenda package. This is a similar type siding that was used elsewhere, so that's sort of what it'll look like. But on the two-dimensional plans, it does look kind of busy. But with the painting, it won't have that sort of full rustic, weathered look that is sort of what sort of appears on the plans before you. So. Staff are satisfied with the material and are supportive of this application, Mr. Chair, and I believe the agent is here if the committee wishes to ask questions. So our recommendation is before you with a number of conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So the process for Part 5, so Part 5 is the process, Part 5 of the Heritage Act is for heritage conservation districts. So Berryfield is one, Market Square is one, and Sydenham, Old Sydenham is the third one. We have 3. So you, as heritage members, are giving advice to council, of the option to give advice to council. Council makes a decision on whether to grant the permit. So today's session is to interact a little bit with the proponents, also to hear from staff, and to offer comments on the proposed work. We don't approve the application here under Part 5. Separately, Part 4 is a different story. So what committee members do here is you have an opportunity to add comments to the file, and that is the advice that goes to council. So, and also the members of the public have a chance to speak to and add comments as well. And that includes members of the public that happen to be working on the project or the owners of the project. So that's all in the same section. So the first thing that happens is questions. No. So first thing that happens is right. We go to the question to the comments that were submitted through Dash. So that's the very end of the package. You'll see the comments there. The members that made comments in writing at the very beginning can confirm that they are accurate, and if they're not accurate, they can say so. Like if something was misinterpreted, they can say so now. So that only applies, I think, to Dawn of the members here. So Dawn, were your comments accurate? Okay. Just a reminder that the rest of you can do this, participate in this section, but you need to be timely because there's a small window to make your comments, and it's right when you first receive the information by email. So now members of the public have a chance to make comments about the application. I just ask that all members of the public be respectful of the tight timelines we are following today. We have a double agenda, and we will lose quorum slightly after noon. So we only have about 2 hours to do all of our business, so we'll just keep that in mind. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Frank Dixon, Williamsville resident. Thank you for the presentation. Just have one small question. On Exhibit C, looking at the map of the property showing the location of the new construction, see the distance from the river is 39.37 meters. And I'm just wondering if the 30-meter criteria for the, so-called OP ribbon of life comes into play here. So if that had been 15 meters from the water, would that have been a problem, or otherwise I have no concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Everyone goes in one section, and then staff can respond. And that includes the agent, if the agent is present and wants to speak. Yeah, please come to a microphone. So this is with the committee, but it's just your opportunity to clarify anything that you think might be.
Yeah, my name's Mike Preston. I'm the agent for Fraser and Maureen Saunders, who are the owner of the property. Just further to what Ryan was saying, the material that we're proposing is more of a cedar shingle rather than a shake. It's a consistent shape. It's a pre-manufactured, pre-stained. It is wood. It's a natural cedar, but it is pre-stained. The boathouse currently has this siding on it, and the house is under renovation right now that we went through Heritage for. We were approved with the same siding, so basically it's just going to be cohesive with the boathouse and the main house. I have a picture of the boathouse currently, if anyone wants to see it, just to see what it looks like. But it's, yeah, I mean, from a distance, it appears like horizontal siding. Sure. I mean, it's not that clear, but it and the color will change from that. It's going to more of a gray color, which was approved for the main house.
Okay. So we'll circulate the photo, and we'll give staff a chance to respond to the one question from members of the public about the 30-meter ribbon of life.
Through you, Mayor, so if the proposal was within 30 meters, we would have applied sort of ribbon of life considerations to this. It would have probably also been subject to a Planning Act process. I believe we have a 30-meter water setback prescribed in the zoning bylaw. If we don't, there would also be considerations for potential impacts to the UNESCO World Heritage designation of the Rideau Canal. So those factors would have come into effect if this were within 30 meters.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we have a recommendation here. The next before we vote whether we support or don't support council on this, everyone here has a chance to give final comments. So if you didn't write anything in advance, that's okay. You can say it now. The clerk will take it down, and it will be included as heritage input as well. So would anyone like to do that? Yes, Catherine.
Question, and it's Exhibit C that I'm looking at, and I'm looking at the drive, the asphalt drive, and just wondering if that is going to be altered at all, or whether the drive stops and then you'd access that building over grass.
So staff is the one, and it's based on what's in the application. So if it's not subject to the application, you can say that. But it's staff that has the ability to respond to questions from the committee.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The application doesn't propose extension of asphalt, but I'm assuming that will happen. I'm not sure if Mr. Preston would like to respond to that, to clarify.
Right. So normally, because of time constraints, we don't get into discussion with the committee and the applicant. But if it's a simple yes, no question, then that's fine.
There is currently an asphalt drive that goes right to where the garage is going. So this was based on the original survey, I guess, which doesn't show it extended, but there's currently an asphalt single-lane driveway that will remain as is.
Right. Okay. Comments that anyone wishes to add to the file? Yes, Mac.
I'd like to say that not a heritage building built in the 70s, I guess. I've always felt it was a real asset to Berryfield. It's a very good-looking building. They've taken good care of the property over the years, and I think it's a good project.
Okay. Any other comments? Yes, Don.
Just to say that I'm quite satisfied now that I understand better just what its appearance will be.
Great. You'll notice in the on page 27, there's a list of who made comments through Dash in the initial circulation. This is, just so you know, this, if you haven't had the training yet, the Dash system is the system that staff uses to process applications. And so with Part 5 applications, committee members basically act as staff members. We have access to the same system, chance to put in technical comments at the early stages. And that way, questions such as shingles and things like that, those things can be clarified before today. And that's sort of the value of adding your comments in advance. So you'll see what Don's comments were on page 28, and there were comments from Peter Goheen, former committee member, on page 29. So you'll see there he asked about the cedar shakes and the shingles and so on, and now he's given a final comment on that. So that's just some context. Okay, so we'll keep moving along. We need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. The recommendation is essentially that we would support council's approval of the alterations as described under the recommendation. So you'll see construction of a one-story detached garage subject to the following 5 conditions. That's the recommendation. It's council that gives the permission. So we're voting now whether we support that, yes or no. It's a yes/no question. Who would like to move it? Mac, seconded by Catherine. Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Good luck with the work. Assuming, of course, council upholds the recommendation. Next on the list is 18 Maitland Street in Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. I believe it's also Part 5, and it looks like Ryan's going to introduce this one as well.
I'm going to be introducing all of them, Mr. Chair. You'll get really sick of me today, I'm sure. So this, all right. So yes, this is 18 Maitland Street. This is in the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District. The property is an unusual interior lot. It's between Maitland and Emily Street, south of King, and just north of the water. The property is accessed by a lane, which you can see sort of here, a shared driveway that comes in, and the property is an interior lot between other properties that face directly onto the street. The subject property contains a 2.5-story house with a side gable roof and a stucco exterior. The subject property has been extensively altered over the years from its original 1.5-story stone building that apparently is underneath. So this is the building that you can see up close. And this is the view of the building from the water. And this is about the best view of the building from Maitland Street that we were able to find. So it is noted in the district plan as a contributing building. It is designated as part of the district. It is noted as it's appropriate in terms of its design and massing and scale, but it does note further on in the description that it has been significantly altered, and given its low visibility, that it doesn't contribute to the character of the district overall. And as I noted, it was built in the early 1940s. It has been much altered since then, and of course, there's a story added to it. So what's before the committee today is an application under section 42. The applicant firstly would like to demolish this small lean-to shed right here and remove it from the property. The other alterations include a rear 1-story ground floor addition, which is this horizontal sided structure here. This is the back of the building, including a porch, a second-story porch, balcony. It'd be a flat roofed structure with horizontal siding. Also at the rear is a third-story addition. And if you look at the picture here, it will fill in this sort of unusual rooftop patio configuration with this addition here. And you can see the addition poking out here. And this is the rear addition as well. So Painted Street will be to the right of on that picture. The applicant is also proposing a dormer that will face towards Maitland Street on the third story. Includes 4 windows. Again, it's on horizontal stained cedar siding on the roof, and the applicant is going to repaint all the stucco on the building. So in terms of our review of this application, the removal of the shed, it has no heritage value, and we're not concerned with that, and we support that removal. The ground floor rear addition, again, as you can see here, is completely out of view from the public. It is a low-profile addition, 1 story with a flat roof, with matching materials to other aspects of the building. And again, we have no concerns with that. Application support that one. The third story addition, also at the rear of the building. The district plan notes that new additions should be located at the rear of the heritage building and that they should not add to the building's width, which this does not. Section 522 and 541 of the district plan notes that rear addition should be clearly secondary to the existing structures and that the rear addition roof ridge height should not exceed the existing building roof ridge. The intent of this policy is to ensure that additions are clearly distinguished from the original building and that the new addition does not create a visual disruption to the scale of the district, of the building in the district. Staff would not typically support a rear addition that projects above the existing heritage building. However, in this case, there is some merit in supporting this application. The location of this building being set back in off of Maitland Street, Maitland Street being a dead-end street that is not overly used by pedestrians, as a Wooded King or Earl or one of the more prominent streets. Makes this property particularly unique. The heritage attributes identified in the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value for the district itself note the compact scale, the composition of the streets and setbacks, widths and building heights, predominantly 2 and 3 stories. Staff are of the opinion that the increase in the height of this addition will have no further negative impacts on the district's heritage attributes. Similarly, the pitch of this new addition, as you can see here, will match the front dormer and will actually fill in that unusual configuration, making this building a little more of a traditional shape, pardon me. The front dormer is the last of the alterations that the applicant is proposing. The new dormer on the front facade under section 431 notes that shed dormers are not recommended in the district. Now, shed dormers are typically defined as a single slope roof, which is in contrast to a gable dormer, which has the peaked roof. Staff are of the opinion that the intent of this policy is to discourage oversized, awkwardly shaped, awkwardly large massings on roofs. Given the prominence and the number of gable dormers in the district as focal points for heritage buildings, this will clearly not be a heritage attribute and not be confused as a heritage attribute in the district. There are also, I would would point the prominent, yeah, the applicant has proposed to clad this dormer in a horizontal siding. I'll go back to that picture, which will match the buildings, the details around the building. The roof will match the existing roofing, and so the use, staff support the use of the proposed materials as it meets the policies of the plan. Staff are recommending that the siding of the dormer be stained in a darker color so that it blends with the darker roof and make it less prominent from the road. So I would note that when viewed from the street, I thought it'd be helpful to show Maitland Street from street view for those who may not have been able to get out and see this property. This is looking down not far south of King Street and coming closer. So this is the driveway where the access to this property is. And you'll note when we get closer, these type of dormers are fairly common on this street, which is kind of unusual for the district, but they are fairly common along here. In this, you can see the building popping up above here a little bit. You can see the top floor of it, and again, another shed dormer. And this stone wall is a pretty dominant structure along this part of the street. And then when you get right close, again, this is this little peak of the building you can see hidden behind here. So it is tucked back in and not an obvious feature along Maitland Street. Staff have expressed concerns with the amount of glazing proposed. As you remember, the plan shows 4 windows. And the number of solids versus openings. However, given the proportions of the vertical slider units will be consistent with the appearance of other windows along this street, and that the subject property is set back in, and as I mentioned, Maitland not being overly used thoroughfare, staff are of the opinion that the dormer will have minimal impact on the impact on Maitland streetscape and on the district. And we are also of the opinion that the dark staining siding on the dormer will help it blend and make it less of a focal point along this part of the street. Given that the windows are more solid structure elements than the clear and transparent elements, and given that the windows will meet the remaining policies of the plan, staff support the use of the 4 vertical sliders in the dormer. However, we are recommending that the applicant consider using 3 as opposed to 4, but we feel that we can support 4 as presented. So, Mr. Chair, that is our take on this. We did circulate to the usual agencies, and we didn't receive any substantial comments from those agencies. We also circulated this committee, and those comments were considered in our review. And we support this application. There are a number of conditions outlined in our support, and they're before you now.
Thank you. So just for the new members, this is a more complex application, and everything with Part 5 is judged against the district plan, and the Sydenham district plan is not the same as the Bearfield district plan. There's a lot of complexity involved. And this is, as your first meeting, this is a really good example of some of that complexity. The recommendation is there. We're following the same process as the last item. So we start with those who made comments in dash, where your comments captured accurately. Don? Yes. Okay. Just flipping to that. Is it just on? Yeah, anyway. Now we go to members of the public, just as we did last item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I want to commend the excellent quality drawings. Because since it's a non-heritage asset and an HCD, I would support it. Otherwise, probably no. Getting some minor infill and use there. So, see, it's all good. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? Reminder that this would be when an agent might want to clarify anything in the application. Mr. Preston is again the worst file.
Hi.
A busy man.
I'm the agent for Montalvo and Nadia Gamal, 18 Maitland. Just regarding some of the comments that Ryan had, as he mentioned, the shed dormer is very common in this little pocket. This area is, I would say, its own kind of entity within Sydenham Ward. The houses are of a bit different scale and look, more of a cottagey type look, I would say. And I have pictures of probably the 6 closest houses to this property, and all of them have shed dormers, all with a high percentage of glazing as well. So we would like to keep the 4 double hung windows as opposed to the 3. We already made concessions with the city on this. We had about 74% glazing originally. We're down to 63%. So we would like to keep it at that. I have pictures, if people want to see, just of neighboring properties. Just as a comment regarding the shed that was to be demolished, I spoke with Mackenzie about this originally as well. I thought we had agreed that we'd put in there that they probably will demolish the shed, but I think they want the option to keep it and move it if possible. So if we could maybe just note that. Anything else? Yeah, regarding the addition that on the 3rd floor that comes up above the ridge line, that was basically done for functional purposes only. The 3rd floor space as it exists is only usable down the ridge line, basically, where you have about 8.5 feet at the peak. So to actually go to the expense of building an addition up there, we want to have it as functional as possible. It's not a big room. It's only the part that extends above the ridge is about 13 feet long, and I think because it only extends 2 feet above it, and because the house is kind of hidden from Maitland Street, I don't think it'll be a visible part. So I would say that the only way to not have that would be to make a flat roof on that addition, which I think would look awkward. We've made the roof pitch to match the dormer, so I think that will be more pleasing to the eye than a flat roof up there.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. I'm just going to clarify something right now so there's no confusion. There's 2 sections to this application. There's the demolition request for the shed. It is subject to the Part 4 rules because it's demolition. Well, it's subject to the demolition rules of heritage properties, right? You can get permission to demolish and not demolish. That's okay. But if the intent is to move the shed, that is something you'll need to discuss with staff. That's slightly separate set of processes. So you can still obtain the permission to demolish today under the normal process, but if you want to go in a different direction, you'd have to contact. So yeah, so the separate parts, just keep that in mind. We're doing the Part 5 process now for the alterations, so that's the addition on the 3rd story. So we need you, this is your opportunity to add final comments. So just as we did last time, you can add comments to the file about the proposed work. Yes, Don.
Does the committee get a chance to ask questions?
That would be a section when you're making your comments. Because in the end, what we're doing is supporting or not supporting council's approval of the proposed alterations, right? Mm-hmm. So you can ask questions if they are going to affect what your comments are, like clarification type questions. But it's not meant to be sort of a discussion with staff in order to we don't have the option to change the recommendation.
I understand, but I also understood that the committee could ask questions of the staff.
Yeah, I'll allow some questions during your turn to give comments. So who would like to go? All right, go ahead, Don.
I do have questions. One is to clarify the bylaws on dormers. I noticed the official plan says shed dormers are not recommended. But in the section of that relates to non-heritage additions, that's section 555, it says dormers visible from the street are permitted subject to the applicable provisions of the zoning bylaw which do not permit shed dormers. Now, I tried to look up the zoning bylaw that dealt with shed dormers, but I couldn't find it. Is there a zoning bylaw that relates specifically to whether shed dormers are permitted or not?
Mr. Chair, there is no bylaw provision that speaks specifically to shed dormers that I'm aware of, and I would be hard-pressed to think that there would be one in the bylaw, but that is actually quite an odd provision to have in the Heritage District Plan. I think it's inaccurate.
Go on, Don.
Another question. It's clear from the photographs and visiting the site that the front entrance, the main entrance door, has been moved one bay, but that doesn't seem to be part of the application. Was that done previously on delegated authority or something like that?
Chair, we're not aware it moved, but I would remind the committee that this property only became a heritage property in 2015, so it's possible that changes were made before that.
What I'm looking at is the drawing or the photograph. Sorry. On page 46, you can clearly see recent construction work, and the door is now in the second bay. And then if you go on, or rather to pages that Jennifer McHenry took, which indeed were a few years ago, on page 53, really page 53, you can see the doorway is in the first bay, but it looks as if it's been done recently because it hasn't been completed, really. So I was just curious about this, but if you have no knowledge of it, this isn't really the point to discuss it. But,
Go ahead and comment. I would say that there may be aspects to the overall picture here that might not be subject to the application and might not be answerable today, but go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, as Mr. Taylor has pointed out, that does not form part of this application, so we'll have to work with the applicant to figure out when that alteration was made, and if it was made subject to the Part 5 designation in the old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District plan, or if it predates that. We'll have to look to see if we have a building permit on record of that change. If we don't, there would need to be a new application made for that alteration, or we'd have to look at enforcement.
Yeah, this isn't actually in any way relevant to the roof addition or the demolition of the shed. It's relevant to the fact that from the photos there appears to have been recent work. Now, the Heritage District Plan came into effect in 2015, but despite public notices and things like that, it's very possible that some work has occurred since the plan came into effect. And as Mr. Newman just said, in that case, because that is an honest mistake if you didn't get a heritage permit for work that needed one, not knowing that you were subject to the heritage plan, that can be done once it's been noticed. But it has nothing to do really with this particular application. They're planning on doing some work that hasn't happened yet, and they're asking for their heritage permit, which is the correct way to do it. So basically, it goes back to the program. So we need you to add whatever comments you want council to have when council make their decision. That's the purpose of this section.
So I'd like to make some comments. I mean, this is a difficult application. There was a fair amount of confusion initially about the heritage status and how visible this property is and so on. And staff have certainly done a lot of work looking at it carefully, and they've given a lot of arguments about to support their recommendation. I think it's very important that this committee look at it very carefully because the application is really not consistent with the heritage guidelines. And if we, if one decision is, if we start making decisions that don't respect the guidelines, then they serve as precedents for others. So, I mean, parts of the application I think are no problem, but there are three issues that really are. The roof line has been raised. There's a shed dormer. The shed dormer has a wide strip of glazing. And the guidelines are really pretty clear on this. Section 4.3.1 says shed dormers are not recommended, but staff are recommending them. 5.2.2 says the height of an addition should be no higher than the main building. 5.3.1 says the roof profile visible from the street, and this is quite visible from the street, should remain unaltered. 5.4.1 says a rear addition roof ridgeline should not exceed the existing roof line. So again, this is quite at variance with the guidelines, and we just need to consider it quite carefully. And again, let me refer you to diagram page 45. I think you should all look at page 45. And that's the view of the house from Maitland Street. You can see the roof is quite visible. If there wasn't a big bit of shrubbery over the wall, the whole house would be quite visible. So it's, it's not really the case that this house is not part of the public view. So the staff have given some arguments. I looked at them, and quite frankly, I don't think they're strong arguments. One comment is that this area is on the very edge of the district and on a dead-end street, but it's a very busy dead-end street. There's a lot of traffic down to the yacht club and so on. And it may be the edge of the district, but it's a very important part of the district. It's some of Kingston's finest buildings are along King Street and Emily Street, and they are looking over this property. So another argument is mentioned is that they say that because the guidelines are silent, the guidelines for alterations to heritage buildings are silent with respect to raising roof line and installing shed dormers. They are referring to guidelines for non-heritage buildings. But I think the reason there are no guidelines for those kinds of alterations to heritage buildings is that no one would expect them to be altered. And it's just not appropriate to use guidelines for non-heritage buildings. And even those guidelines say shed dormers are certainly, well, it says not permitted, but at least they're not appropriate. And wide glazing areas are not permitted. Again, the guidelines say wide stretches of glazing are not permitted unless there's no occupancy on the ground level. And there is occupancy in the ground level, so it simply doesn't apply. So my conclusion is really that it's very difficult for me to approve this recommendation. And, I think this committee has to insist that guidelines are respected. The committee no longer has the power to make recommendations to council, so the guidelines are really the only protection that the district has. If they can be ignored readily, then heritage districts have no purpose. They're just a complete waste of time. So I think we all have to think about whether this is acceptable or not. I can't support this recommendation. And in terms of making a comment, perhaps I could say that I would be prepared to accept a compromise where the roof line is not raised, and as I think Mr. Preston mentioned, you have 8.5 feet at the roof line, so it doesn't have to be raised, but the penalty is that the rear roof has to be almost flat. I think that's more acceptable than raising the roof line because that is invisible from Maitland Street. So if the recommendation were altered to remove the raised roof line, and yes, maybe we could accept the shed dormer because there's a variety of strange dormers in the neighborhood, but with only 3 windows, or 3 separate windows rather than continuous windows. If the recommendation were changed in that sense, then I think I could support it, but I think the whole committee has to come together on this if we're going to deal with this in an appropriate way. Thank you.
Thank you. So other committee members may wish to speak. Reminder, it may seem like a bit of a debate, but really you each get 1 turn to add comments that the clerk is writing down, and council's going to receive all those comments. Ultimately, they're going to, if there's arguments on 2 sides, they're going to have to look at all the comments to inform their own decision whether to grant this application or not. Councillor Schell, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Part of this discussion has been about the area and how it looks currently, and how there are quite a few shed dormers already in this little enclave. Have some of these shed dormers been put up since we had the conservation district plan, or do you know offhand? No.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe they were done after the plan. I think they were done before we had the district plan in place.
Okay. Beginning to think is that when the conservation district plan was created for Sydenham, nobody thought to look at this area as a separate area, because it always has been. In fact, I think it used to have a name. There was one owner who built everything way back, so it was its own little area, and over the years it's become its own look. So in this discussion, another question is, when it is said in a plan that something is not recommended, what is that in terms of policy? Does that mean we don't do it, or just that it's not recommended, but can do it doesn't mean it's not prohibited? Can I just get clarification of that?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Councillor Schell, for bringing up that question, because I think that's a really important question in how staff administer the Heritage Conservation District plan. The discretionary language is really important. It is not shed dormers are prohibited, it's shed dormers are not recommended. So that does enable staff to give consideration to things like context and the appropriateness of massing and the impact that that may have on the overall heritage attributes of the district. So all of the policy references that Mr. Taylor spoke to were shoulds or not recommended. So unlike the Berryfield Heritage Conservation District plan, where with the recent update, a lot of the shoulds were changed to shalls, in this particular case, the old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District plan still includes a lot of discretionary or flexible language. And so that does, for better or for worse, provide a means by which to make a case to support something. In this particular case, the not recommended, in our view, is open for interpretation and is enabling in looking at alternatives.
Thank you. I have got the picture of 45, and I've got the plan 58, I think it's 50, no, 60. There's a hole through it, can't quite tell. So what we're seeing from page 45 is there will be a shed dormer that you will now begin to be able to see from the street, similar to the shed dormer on the house that is quite close to the street. And there will be a little bit of a roof popping over the top when you look from the street. And that's been what we do fuss about. What is it that the public is going to see in terms of our heritage properties? So I don't feel it's a substantial enough change in terms of it making it look no longer part of Sydenham District Conservation Area that I can support this design. Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of, Patricia, you're next.
My understanding, if I'm correct, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that because it's a recommendation and not a prohibited thing to have the dormered shed, and so the staff took into consideration the context of the other buildings. And given what Councillor Schell has said about that particular area having been built likely by the same person, so there's a particular style there, it sounds like it's a little bit different from the rest of the conservation area. So in the conservation plan, is that unique style of that part of the conservation area taken into consideration? And if not, should it be? Like, should the conservation plan be revised to reflect a unique grouping of buildings within the conservation district?
Yeah, I'll allow staff to respond to that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So for Old Sydenham specifically, there are a number of sub-areas that are recognized for their unique character in contrast to the other areas of the district. So there certainly is some merit to considering defining the unique character of different areas of the district. So that's something that is not reflected in the plan today for Maitland, although to your point, a lot of this area in Jennifer McKendry's work on page 54 of your agenda speaks to the area being established by Henry Hill. So a lot of this was built by the same interest. And you can see again that in the foreground and in the background, the shed dormer is not uncommon to this specific area. So again, we draw, when there are those areas of discretion, we draw direction from what we see in the immediate area of the proposal, and in this particular case, that helped influence our recommendation.
Did you want to keep going? Do you have any more comments to add to the file?
To ask, is this something that perhaps should be on the agenda of this committee, is to just revisit the conservation plan and maybe make additional clarifications about those unique areas?
That's an important question. I'm going to leave it. Staff will have to consider that possibility, especially if this thing happens more than once, this kind of situation where there's so much confusion. The point of having a district plan is to provide clarity. It has to be something public that the members of the public can read and say, oh, okay, ridge lines and dormers here. Oh, it says right here what is recommended, right? So that's the whole point of it. We're still in the very early stages. It's only been around for a couple of years. So changes may well be needed, and this is a real good litmus test for that type of thing. We'll keep moving. Catherine, you're next.
I agree with Don in relation to the shed dormer in that there is an excess of glass. But, you know, I do think it is in character with that particular little enclave. I'm more concerned about the ridge and the additional footage above the existing roof line. Can you hear me? So I'm concerned about the ridge, the new ridge, being above the existing ridge line, and it is visible. It is going to be visible, just as that cutout is visible from Maitland Street. This will be visible, and I don't see the necessity for it. On the other side of the ridge, we have a dormer window which projects up to a certain height, which presumably is a height that you could work with. You could stand up in it, or you wouldn't have put the dormer in. So that there would still be some slope on the roof, even if you brought it down to the ridge line. I just think if we go with this, in the context of the Heritage District, we're setting a precedent, and I don't think it's healthy to do that. And if we go with it, I think that it continues this trend of death by 1,000 cuts to the heritage plan. So I would not recommend that ridge line.
Thank you. Mac, you're next.
Just a couple of comments. I actually think Maitland Street is a fairly busy street because of the yacht club. People are walking up and down there all the time. That being said, I think this building sits back far enough. And if you look at that elevation you're showing recently on page, that just show the front elevation, it's gone. It's gone because of the state, because of the punch. Page 68 or whatever. We hit up there a minute ago. Could we have that up again? Elevation A5. I think when you look at this elevation, that elevation is
That's
taken.
page 60.
Oh, yeah, I can't tell because of the right there.
So page 60.
Thank you. Okay. When you look at that from a plan view, this is really an elevation, created by the computer, by the drawing, and it's as if you're looking, straight on the place from out of the street. I would suggest that you would never see that, because you're looking up at the building and you're a long way away from it. And I think these are guidelines that we have, and I think that the exceptions for the dormers in this particular area, the shed dormers, is perfectly fine because that's what's around it, and that's what this whole enclave is all about. And I don't really have problems with that ridge line creeping up above the other ridge.
Yeah. Do any of the new members wish to make any comments? We understand that it's your first meeting, but you still can make comments if you like. Okay, well, I'm going to make a couple comments. I've written some down here. I was going to write it all down in advance, but it's really hard to do that when you don't know how the discussion is going to go. Okay, so James, these are my comments. Regarding the arguments in the staff package that minimize the significance of the work because of it being sort of tucked away in behind in the middle of a block and off of a side street of Maitland. I agree with Mac and Dawn and others that have said actually Maitland is quite busy, especially for pedestrian traffic. There's the yacht club. There's also that really busy Westonburg property across the street, which is right on the corner. So it actually is quite a high visibility place, and also because Sydenham has very little shoreline, it's fairly well known as well. So I guess I would say that it's regrettable that staff is using those arguments that minimize significance of this work. I think it's quite important. Regarding the shed dormer, I was absolutely on the side of, because I represent all of Sydenham, and there are shed dormers in my district that are occupied by rental units that are absolutely hideous looking. Okay, and it's kind of a thing if you talk to people that look at design. Sort of to bash the shed dormer. But when people are doing that, they're talking about those ones that are almost the full width of the roof. They're essentially a third story or a fourth story on top of a building. So you might have, like, there's one on Johnson Street that's just absolutely ridiculous. It's like 3 stories of red brick, and then there's this gigantic siding shed dormer that's essentially like 2 more bedrooms on the top floor. That kind of shed dormer is the reason why it's not recommended. I've been convinced by talking to staff and by talking to the agent, Mr. Preston, that this particular dormer is actually well designed and does very much fit the area. So I'm willing to make an exception. I'm agreeing with staff on the shed dormer that it's a nuanced argument, but this is necessary. Without the dormer, you don't have the height for the space to be usable. Like you heard Mr. Preston say, it's only at the ridge line, at the center of the gable, that you've got enough height to stand up. With the dormer, you have a usable space. So I think the dormer is okay. The glazing, I actually agree with Don. 3 would be better than 4. A little bit less glazing would be better. Not a deal breaker for me, but I do agree with Don. The roof line actually is kind of the reverse of the dormer. I initially thought it would be okay. I just sort of imagined it being sort of insignificant. But after taking a closer look, I actually don't believe it is necessary for the space to be usable. I think it's a little bit of a luxury. I'm probably okay with it, but I agree with Catherine and Dawn that ideally, if we want our district plan to be taken seriously, we should probably be insisting on that kind of thing, that we don't be too lenient on things like that if it's not absolutely necessary. So I'm willing to make an exception for the shed dormer, but not for the ridge line. I think if that's negotiable, if it's possible to create a usable space without raising the roof, or raising the roof so that it's not visible at all, I would say that would be preferable. Now, just let me, as a parenthesis, you don't have to put this in to council. Obviously, we don't negotiate with the applicant here in the Part 5 process. They propose the work and council says yay or nay. So that's what I have to say about this. And the only other sort of overarching comment I'd like to say is that because we're at the beginning, and I've already kind of alluded to this, because we're at the beginning of the process with Part 5, because the district plan is not well understood or hasn't been really absorbed by the population, there's a political reality that we kind of have to put a litmus test to alterations that stand a little bit of test of common sense. So to just look at the whole project as a whole, is this going to cause outrage to my constituents, the way I look at it as a Sydenham councillor? Well, I did have the opportunity to speak to a couple of neighbors yesterday when I went down to the site. Neither of them, who remain anonymous, neither of them mentioned any concerns when I described what was being proposed. So that was comforting. And I would say we've heard from one member of the public here today who echoed that kind of sentiment, that these are possibly heritage significant alterations, but in the overall impact, sort of, it is actually minimal. So in that sense, I think I agree with staff. I'm willing to support the approval of this application, but you won't find me arguing very strenuously in favor at council because of my position as Heritage Sheriff. I want to maintain credibility. I can't really take sides on this. So I'm kind of caught halfway in between, but I don't think we have enough reason to deny our support. Thank you.
Let's make one more quick comment. Very short. I think this is one of the reasons why the whole part of the staff, as opposed to coming to our committee first, so we can really understand the proposition. It's very difficult to look in Dash and get all the intricacies and what's going on in this. That's why I think the Part 5 designation doesn't work. I know that's not really part of the issue, but I can't help putting it in.
That won't be in the application comments. Thank you for that. We have some more conversation on that. We need a mover and a seconder for this recommendation. So moved by Mac, seconded by Councillor Schell. So we are either supporting or not supporting council's approval of the application. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that passes 5-3. Thank you very much. Next item. Fingers crossed the rest of our business is not quite as controversial. So let's see what we've got here. 826 Princess Street. This is a heritage permit, so it must be part 4 because I don't believe 826 Princess Street is part of a heritage district.
You are correct, Mr. Chair. This is a Part 4 property. The property is known as Ashton. It is located in Williamsville on the south side of Princess Street between Regent and Macdonell. It includes a neoclassical style limestone villa built around 1840 with a rear addition built in the 1970s. It's the regional office of the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. This is a close-up of the property. This is our lovely estate building. The heritage value of this property, it is a Part 4 property. It was designated in 1987 and amended in 2017. It's a landmark limestone villa built by Kingston City Hall architect George Brown. It has association with the Metcalf family who named it Ashton. The Metcalfs were prominent for generations in the city. The original builder was an engineer, worked on the canal, and James Henry Metcalf was a well-known politician and businessman in the city. The application before this committee, the plans are here. So the application before the committee is for a number of alterations to the exterior of this building. On all 3 of the prominent sides of this building, there are parking lots on 2 sides and in front right onto Princess Street. On the north side, the application is to remove the current front porch and barrier-free ramp, which runs the length of the facade. Replace the front porch with a poured-in-place concrete step and landing with a stainless steel railing. The traditional front door will be repaired and repainted, and the 3 second-story windows will be replaced as they are later vinyl units. The east side of the building is proposed to have a new barrier-free ramp with railings to access a new vestibule and covered entrance on the side of the building where the 1840s stone building meets the 1970s addition at the back. There's a recessed vestibule proposed with a roof structure and some CNIB signage to be their new main entrance. The west side of the property, which is currently unused green space, or little used green space, is proposed to get a new deck, an imitation wood deck with steps and a ramp. A new black metal fence is proposed. There are a couple of enlargements to windows of the 1970s edition to encourage or to accommodate patio doors, and a small addition on the second floor, which is virtually invisible from the street, to accommodate a second floor washroom. Oh, here it is, which is right in this location here. In terms of our review, we are generally supportive of this application. The one item that we have noted is, and I'll try to get a view from the front, is the new entrance feature. Staff have expressed concerns of the dome. This building's heritage value is largely in its geometric square form and massing. There are little, other than the elliptical fan light, little arch features on this building, so this will really stand out and become more of a focal point, which is contrary to good heritage planning practices. So we have included a recommendation that if the applicants wish to retain that feature, that it be reduced in height by at least half, so that the dome is more of a flatter feature, or removed entirely. So that has been included, and the owner has confirmed that they do not object to this condition and are exploring options. So we did circulate this to our usual internal agencies, and they have no outstanding concerns. Was circulated to this committee. There was some suggestions made regarding the decorative wood casings around the window, which we have added to be retained when the windows are replaced. On the side, that's the second floor that you're looking at. There was a suggestion that the railing along the wall of the stone building be removed so that the stone could be more visible. The applicants are concerned with that because this is meant for those with vision problems and partially and completely blind. And the two railings are important, and they wish to keep those. So, Mr. Chair, we have done our assessment on this. Canadian National Institute of the Blind have been a respectful steward of this property for many years. The proposed alterations reflect the commitment to conserving this building, and we support the alterations with the conditions that I mentioned. Put those up for you.
Thank you. So first, those who made comments in dash have a chance to clarify or just confirm. Sorry? Moving too fast here. Part 4. Ignore what I said. We go to questions from the committee to staff about the application. Questions only. Mac.
Do we know stone wall on that front ramp was built?
I'm afraid I do not, Mr. but the agent is here and perhaps could answer that.
Right. Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, I think it might have been later than that because there used to be a computer company in there before the Institute of the Blind took it over, and that might have been the early 90s or something. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's my only question.
Any other questions from members of the committee? So, okay. So then we go to members of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I also want to commend the outstanding illustrations. So this is a building of outstanding quality, and it's also excellent in how it's been repurposed. So I'm fully supporting all of the items that are listed here, and I have one more request. Given that this is on an arterial, it's on Princess, I walk by there quite often, and I've admired the building. I'm wondering if we can also obtain a heritage history plaque, which would have some highlights from the very thorough report here, because I think it does have interest for the average person to see that. So that's my request. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wish to speak? Okay. So staff have an opportunity to respond to the question from a member of the public about the plaque.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we've written them down, and we'll take note of that.
Okay. So we need a mover and seconder for the recommendation that's in the package. That recommendation describes the proposed work with 10 bullets, and then it has 10 conditions. Some of which were already described. We need a mover and a seconder, moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Catherine. Is there any discussion on the recommendations? Yes, Mac.
A couple of things. I totally the bubble is not appropriate. The little dome. Otherwise, I think it looks pretty good. My other question is, do you say vinyl windows for the front and the second floor? Or did I mishear that?
Through Mr. Chair, currently vinyl windows. The proposal, I believe, is wood metal cladding.
Oh, great. Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. That's super.
Any other comments from members of the committee? Yeah.
I just have and that is just to say, I mean, it's a beautiful building, and you notice it when you're driving up or down Princess Street. And I do see this as an amazing improvement to it, and I really like the fact that there will be an iron fence that extends beyond it, because it kind of looks like wasteland right now, and so it will provide a much more unified look to the building. So congratulations, I think it's beautiful.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sorry, what is that? Oh. Sure. And if you did want to address the committee, you should use your microphone.
How do I get out of here? Escape?
He's going to put up some illustrations. And Mr. Zabak, if you would like to address us, I just need to get consent of the committee. Is it okay if he addresses us in this point because we're in deliberations? Okay.
26. Just minimize that. Okay, sorry. Where am I here? I can't see it. That's the problem. Okay, I got it here. Here we go. Yeah. Just, I may speak. The purpose of this is really two things: to make the building accessible. The building currently isn't accessible. It has an elevator that's kind of at the rear of the building, so when you enter the building off Princess Street, you have to come through the main door, split, which is a large room there, kind of in half, to get back to the elevator. It's a real functional problem in the building, and the CNIB was absolutely hoping to change that. So the principle here was to get that big ramp affair off the front of the building. It is settling a bit. It's a bit of a problem. And the big door at the front of it's impossible to put an operator on that with any dignity. So the idea is to bring that barrier-free entrance to the back of the building next to the elevator and the main stair, which takes you between the floors. It's kind of logical. We have dropped the skylight. You can see on the, I don't know if you can see it that well on that rendering, but we can go back a bit. The intention was to make it, I think the staff's recommendation was to make it smaller, is to make it lower. We'd like to get some light back there under that canopy. That's why it's there. And we want to do an acrylic one, a one-piece acrylic one, which won't leak. It'll last for a long time. So there's a view of the ramp. This is looking, coming up the ramp from the street. We want to give that ramp some prominence. That's why it's that wide. That's why it requires two railings. And this is some images of what that back deck would be like. There's the 1974 addition. The little hardy plank addition at the top is to make the washroom on the second floor accessible. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a cute little video.
Well, we made it. I had to show it to you.
Those models were very lifelike. Right, we need to vote on the recommendation. It's been moved and seconded, unless there's any final comments. All right, we'll call the vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? So that's part 4. We are recommending approval of the work. Thank you. I need to go to the bathroom. We can carry on without a break if the vice chair wants to take over, or we can take a 3-minute recess. 3 minutes? Okay, it's exactly 10:57. I will be back in my chair at 11 o'clock. You're at ease until then. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. We are now at addition of non-designated properties to the Heritage Register, 9296 Barrack Street. Ryan, if you can give us just the facts, please.
Just the facts. Well, this one's a little different. This is not an alteration. This is a recommendation to add a number of properties to the Heritage Register as non-designated properties in order to put a minimal level of protection over a large stone wall that runs through the back yard of these properties. So Under Section 27, the municipality is required to keep a register, and one of the options they can add is properties that are not designated to that register, but council believes to have value. At council on January 9th, a motion was passed to direct staff to process the listing of the properties either abutting or directly associated to this feature. And what that includes is properties that face onto Wellington Street to the right, Queen Street to the south, and these backyards of these two properties on Barrack Street. What we are looking at conserving is a large limestone wall that's at the rear of these properties. And you can see it varies in size from about 2 meters to about 4, maybe higher, 6 meters. It's coarse limestone. It includes a couple of openings, most notably this large opened or arched carriageway opening. It was believed that through early maps that this was probably a stable or drive shed, the remainder of that, which was associated with the National Hotel that was located on the corner of Wellington and Barrack Street. And so it would put this structure prior to 1850. So this is the view looking north from Queen Street. This is the view looking east, and this is the view looking south from Barrack Street. I would note, and this is what it looks like poking out onto Wellington Street. So I would note that the properties on Queen Street, these 3 or so down here, are currently designated under the Heritage Act on our register. So any demolition, removal of structures on that property would require prior approval from council. So they are not part of this listing. However, the properties on Barrack and Wellington are not currently on the register. So our recommendation is to add those 4 properties to the register as non-designated properties. Our next step in this process is to look at formalizing a statement of significance to determine if this structure is worthy of designation. And that process would involve going through the Heritage Properties Working Group and then bringing that decision back here for consultation. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and that direction is for you.
Thank you. The last thing that Ryan said is really important. What we're doing today is not designating the wall, it's not designating the properties listed here. It's the thing called the Heritage Register. It's a list, the Heritage List, the listed. When a property is listed, if you want to demolish, you have to get permission from council. That's all it means. So in the meantime, staff is going to find out whether this is a feature of heritage significance. So that's not what we're deciding today. We're not pronouncing judgment on the wall. We're just saying, should we add it to the list of heritage interest, and staff will do the work, and then we'll have an answer. So that's the recommendation, that 92 Barrack, 96 Barrack, 232, 34 Wellington, and 236 Wellington are added to the Heritage Register. Any questions? Okay, it's fairly straightforward. Need a mover and a seconder. Oh, sorry, members of the public first.
Just very briefly, so I'll be supporting this. And again, I'm just asking, once the research gets to a more advanced stage, that some sort of designated plaque be placed there, because it's a really interesting feature right in the middle of downtown. There's all kinds of fascinating things that have happened there. So, thanks.
Thank you. We always like to hear that things are fascinating. There's another member of the public. Please just state your name and say what you have to say.
Hi, is it on? Hi, I'm Kurt Kahn. My wife and I own the property at 236 Wellington Street, so we have an interest in the wall. A few concerns I have are the repair. If you look at the photo from the south side, there's significant deterioration of the wall. So would this listing, not designation, somehow ensure that the wall gets repaired to the standards, or bring it back up to safe, or to bring it up to the standards that it should be at? Our property, we own the part that has the 4-meter high portion, and we've invested a significant amount of time and effort and money in that to keep it well. And the owners of the property on Barrack Street have not done the same. Also, there's been a letter circulated to us with their intention of demolishing it, and I think this is what kind of instigated this whole situation to be considered for listing. My concern is that they're going to pursue this demolition, and I'd not like to see that happen. So those are the comments I had. And also on the I guess on the little abutment that juts out onto Wellington Street, there's been an alteration to the wall. If you look at that picture, there's a gargoyle or some sort of thing that's been placed on it. You can see it there in that photo beside Passage Genova. It's not, in my opinion, like it doesn't go with the wall. Is this something that the Heritage Committee will look at to assess and see whether it should be removed and repaired? I guess one last question. If this property is listed, I understand that there's a certain amount of funds available to help repair the wall, and that exact portion there is starting to crumble. There's a certain amount of cracking. It was repaired in 2006, I believe, and it was done with a non-limestone-based mortar mix, so there's a certain amount of cracking. I think it's a cement mortar mix that it needs to be addressed pretty soon, or else it's going to crack the blocks. It already has at the base, if the photo doesn't really show it, but it does. So yeah, those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you. I can answer one of those questions. So if this is listed by council, then any demolition would need permission of council for the demolition permit. That would not be the case if it was not on the heritage list. Are there any other members of the public? Then I'll go to staff to answer the questions from the two public members.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so we'll certainly consider the idea of a plaque. We can look into the gargoyle and whether or not there's any issue with that, but really, because it's not designated, it's not technically an alteration to the features, so I'm not sure the teeth that we would have necessarily to enforce against that. The listing, as the chair has mentioned, would preclude demolition without going to council. We do have a property standards bylaw, so if we start to contemplate that this may be becoming a situation of demolition by neglect, or if there's a health and safety related issue with the stone wall, we'd certainly look to our property standards bylaw to enforce the upkeep or the stabilization of the feature. So.
If I can just add, we have been in discussion actually with the property owner. So the property owner is fully aware of the listing and has been supportive and has been willing to work with city staff and cooperate in terms of how things move forward.
That's great. It's always when the property owners understand the reason for what we do. Thank you. So we need a mover and a seconder for the addition of this to the non-designated properties register. Moved by Dawn, seconded by Councillor Schell. Any further discussion? Yes, Dawn.
Just to commend the for putting a lot of energy into this project, saving the wall, and I hope it works out well.
Yes, thank you. I echo that sentiment. We'll call all those in favor. Opposed, and that carries. Now we have a number of designations. I'll just say right off the bat, when we have a designation recommendation, there's always 2 clauses per property generally. So you'll see the intention to designate clause and then the notice of objection clause, and you'll see it repeated multiple times in the case when there's multiple addresses. So there's basically 2 clauses per address. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would only just add from our last discussion that until the property is designated, it's not eligible for the grant funding program. So I think we kind of missed that one. But these properties that we're proposing would be eligible for grant funding. This is a request for notice of intention to designate for 4 properties in the Westbrook area. And the report provides you with the background of the work that's been done to date, the assessment that was done. The properties that we're looking at include the Westbrook United Church right on Princess Street, This property is a Gothic Revival limestone church built in 1867. It's associated with the Powley family who owned all land in the area, and it's also associated with the Methodist Church in Kingston, and it's a landmark in this area. This one, we have been in discussions with the owners and the parishioners of this church. They have some future plans for this, but are happy to go ahead with the designation, and we will be in further discussions with their future plans. And so will this committee. This is the Sproul House, also on Princess Street. It's a two-story Ontario vernacular brick farmhouse built before 1878. It contributes to the rural character of the historic Westbrook area. And again, the owners have been contacted and have provided input on the designation bylaw. This is the Charles Wesley Benjamin Farmhouse on the south side of Princess Street on the sort of west of Westbrook. It was built around 1876. The Benjamin family are an early farming family in Westbrook, owned a lot of land. Charles's father, Ebenezer Jr., owns the house, or built the house next door, which is the next one. This was the son's house. And they're also the family that deeded lands to the school board to build the Red Rock School, which we designated just last year. This is a landmark on the west end of the village, and the owners are aware that we're proceeding and have put input into the bylaw. This is the father's house, Ebenezer Benjamin Jr., very similar house. Again, it's an Ontario vernacular, excellent limestone construction on this house. Apparently put a little more effort into his own house. And it also includes an outbuilding, which is stone. It's now a pig pen, but it's an interesting little farmhouse made of stone. These ones, again, date to the early 1870s and contribute to that historic rural character of the village and the understanding of the Benjamin family. And again, the owners are aware of this and have provided input into this designation. These designation bylaws were reviewed by the Heritage Properties Working Group, who support this application. And Mr. Chair, given that they meet the criteria, the provincial criteria for designation, we recommend approval of the serving of the notice of intention to designate. And should we receive no letters of objection, we recommend that council proceed with designated properties. Thanks.
Great. I'm always excited when we get this kind of thing because this is ultimately the backbone of what we do at the Heritage Committee, the designations themselves. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to thoroughly go through everything. Sometimes we hire consultants, but recently it's been staff that's been doing all the work. So congratulations for that, and keep up the good work. All right, so we have four properties here. We go to questions from members of the public, or from members of the committee, and then questions from members of the public. Does anyone wish to ask a question? Catherine.
Question about Westbrook United Church. Is the stone wall included in the designation?
I don't believe it is, Mr. Chair.
You're referring to the one in the photo at the front of the property there? Any other questions? Don?
If that stone wall is on the property, then I would say it's included, but I don't know whether it is on the property or not.
So that's correct. It does have the entire property, but the features that are of heritage, that are heritage attributes, need to be listed in the designation bylaw, correct?
That's correct. And through Mr. Chair, the stone wall isn't explicitly included in the list of attributes on that property, but to Mr. Taylor's point, if it is on the property line or within the property, then it would be part of the designated property. It's just not specifically recognized.
So alterations to it would still require a heritage permit if it was designated, because it's on the property. But we wouldn't have the benefit of it being listed as a heritage attribute to help the discussion. Okay. Thank you. Members of the public?
Just very quickly, also want to commend the excellent work done on this. And I really learned something from this particular item. not thinking that there's heritage buildings out that way, but there definitely are. And I'm wondering if there are any further properties out that way that are not designated that could be looked at, that exist we don't know about. These are all within about 3 or 4 blocks of each other, right? So, thanks.
That's a great question. It's not subject to this particular report. I do know that staff has made a concerted effort to survey outlying areas in places like Westbrook and farmhouses and things like that recently, things that would have been previously overlooked. But this report is really about these 4 properties. Okay, we need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Catherine, seconded by Patricia. Any discussion? We'll call the vote. All those in favor and opposed, and that carries. Thank you very much. Next item is an application for a heritage permit, 9 North Street. This is part 4, and we'll ask for a description here, and everybody is, of course, aware of the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sure many members of the committee are familiar with this property. This is known locally as the Imperial Oil Building. It is a Part 4 designated property. It also has a heritage easement agreement on title. The property is located between Rideau Crest Home on Rideau Street and the Inner Harbor, right in Douglas Fleur Park, and it's at the terminus of North Street. The property was sold. It includes almost entirely, the property almost entirely includes a stone 1-story former storage building for Imperial Oil. It was built in 1898. The current building is in an advanced stage of disrepair. Recently, this past winter, it suffered a collapse of the south wall, including the chimney, that fell into the building. The city sold this property to Abna Investments in 2014 with the understanding that they would restore and redevelop the property for 8 residential units. The heritage value is largely associated with the industrial and rail history in this area of Kingston. It's a very simple, purpose-built industrial building. It was built in 1898, actually for the Queen City Oil Company of Kingston, which owned the business at the time before it was sold to Imperial Oil. It was designed by well-known architect William Newlands, who did a number of prominent buildings in the city, and it's constructed of local limestone. The application before you is a request under Section 33 of the Act to see the adaptive reuse of this building come to fruition. That includes the proposed the entire repointing and restoration of all the masonry stonework, including rebuilding the south wall and the chimney to the same profile, the installation of new metal-clad wood sash windows and appropriate doors into all the existing openings. The roof will be reconstructed to the same profile as what was there. In order to accommodate the residency units on the second floor, the roof is proposed to be raised by approximately half a meter in order to accommodate that. The transition between the stone wall and the new roof is proposed to be clad in a gray hardy plank shiplap type siding. The roof is to include 2 elevated skylight boxes to provide light into the stairwells, and a wall-mounted sign is proposed along the facade of the building to reflect its former use and its common name. So plans were prepared by Schultz and Zabak Architects, which are provided in your agenda, and there was a heritage impact statement prepared by Andre Scheinman, which is also included in your agenda. So staff generally support the alterations that are before you today. There were a couple of concerns that we've noted that I'm bringing your attention to. The skylights that are proposed to provide light will be highly visible given the elevated nature of North Street in this area and the prominent location of this building. They are not desirable from a heritage conservation perspective, as they compete with the simple profile and design of this heritage building, and will compete with the prominence of the attributes therein. So staff have included a recommended condition of approval that if they wish to retain these features, that the height of these structures be reduced by at least half in order to bring them as close to skylight flush with the roof profile as possible, and that's been included. I would note that the entrance canopies that you see on the plan are not, the applicant has confirmed, are not part of this proposal at this time. The two former entrances on the east side of the building, which is the park side of the building, are to be the main entrances into this building. The parking will be to the rear, as you can see on here. However, they are proposing that those existing entrances continue to be the primary focuses. They are proposed to create entrance vestibules with separate doors to each of the 8 units, so 4 in each. And the plans are one plan show doors on these features, and the floor plans show openings. It is from a heritage perspective, the difference between an opening or door and no door is really negligible. However, from a safety perspective, as well as garbage collection and everything else in that area, we would recommend that that doors be installed in those areas. So we've included a condition that period appropriate doors be installed in those existing openings. And I believe that we did have a comment come in from Cultural Services regarding the name of the signage, which you note on the plan shows Imperial Oil. It was an interesting suggestion that we've rolled in, that perhaps changing the name to Queen City Oil Warehouse would be a good tribute to the owners of this business and this building when it was built, as opposed to Imperial Oil, who bought the property, or bought the business and the property a few years after this was completed. So we have provided that to the applicants, and they are considering that. So this project to restore this valued asset into the future is supported by staff, heritage staff. We did circulate it. There are a number of technical comments that were provided that don't change the intent of this recommendation. I would note that there are future planning applications that will have to be undertaken in order to see this undertaken proceed, including site plan control and official plan amendment and the like. Heritage Kingston was circulated on this application, and the comments are included. So, Mr. Chair, we recommend approval of this application and include a number of conditions in that approval, which are outlined before you. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, part 4 process. So we'll start with questions from members of the committee. Don.
About the highlights, I understand the staff concern about the height of them. I guess I'm just wondering if the applicants considered removing them and putting skylights along the slope above the stairways. They'd be much less noticeable, and I think probably simpler to install.
Was questions? Maybe they can answer that question.
My understanding, Mr. Chair, is that the owners are considering our suggestion. I haven't heard whether they are, what direction they're going with that.
May I?
Yeah, because it's part 4, it will allow you to respond, to enlighten us a little bit.
If you notice in the plan of the building, the skylights are positioned above the landing at the top of the stairs. If you understand the plan of this building, there's a stair that is kind of coincidental with the door locations. We wanted to maintain those doors, and we want to combine all the access to the units through those doors. So there would be 4 apartments leaving each one of those doors. In order to avoid putting fire escapes on this building, we have to, sorry, I'll get to that later, but the landing on those stairs, we just wanted to avoid a situation where you're walking into a corridor that is completely reliant on electric light. We'd like to get something there above, the suggestion of maybe putting a skylight above the stair and aligning it with the slope of the roof might be acceptable. But we would like to get some kind of natural light fixture above those stairs.
Thank you. Any others from members of the committee? Mac?
This goes to staff. Why is it, did the building department, whoever it was that gave you the advice that you had to have a door in the front for safety issues? Why was that? I kind of like the fact that it's open and all the entrances are exposed.
Can I help? According to the Ontario Building Code, if I have an apartment unit, one above another, you would know this, that has to share a stair to leave the building, those units require a second means of egress. The top units would require a second means of egress. So we talked to the building department. The building department's actually suggesting they were the ones suggesting we take the doors off, man. In other words, that vestibule at the bottom of the stairs has to remain exterior to the building.
So I'm a little confused. Ryan said that you're suggesting put the doors back on?
No.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood that.
No, we originally showed plans with a door on, way back, we showed plans with the door on that. We spoke to the building department, and the recommendation from the building department was to remove the doors.
Oh, great, okay, yeah.
That would allow us to have that all the units exiting directly outside at the point where those doors are.
I misunderstood that, sorry, that's great.
Any other questions? Members of the public?
So I've got quite a few on this one. So I'm very happy to see this coming forward because it's basically being saved from the wrecking ball if it manages to be successful. And I'm absolutely enchanted by the concept. So that's some of the good comments. Now getting into the questions here. This has been an oil depot for decades, right? And it's classified as a brownfield. And my question is, given that residential is the plan, right, for it to be repurposed, I'm going to be getting into planning questions here. Is it actually possible to do this? Like, is it legal to repurpose a former oil depot into residential under these conditions? I know it's not really a heritage question, maybe it's more of a planning question, but I'd like to get that on record.
Yeah, just remember, because we're going to run out of time today, right. We got to really stick to what's on the agenda.
So what I'm going to do then, Mr. Chair, is I'm going to write them in to save time.
Right, thank you. Any other members of the public? Okay, so now we're moved to deliberations. Need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Mac, seconded by Councillor Schell. You'll see the recommendation is the listing of the work, 7 bullets, and then the 10 conditions as suggested by staff. Any discussion? Don.
I'd like to make a slight amendment to add to condition 3 concerning the skylight boxes, to add to that item, alternatively, skylights along the east slope of the roof may be installed.
Sorry, is that condition 2 then?
3.
Condition 3, you're right. Sorry, I was looking at the...
Just continue.
Yeah, so it reads, to be at least 50% in order to be as close to flush with the roof profile as possible, semicolon, and then you're adding wording.
Yes.
Did you, James?
I believe you wanted to add alternatively, skylights along the east slope of the roof may be installed.
Yes.
So so amendments are in order for Part 4 applications because we are the ones making the recommendation. So the proposed amendment from Don, which needs a seconder, is to add some wording at the end of condition 3. Seconded by Mac. Before we go any further, we need to hear from staff.
Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm that we have our east and west correct. The motion, I understand, said east, which is the park side, the water side. Is that the movers'
Because I think
Did you mean the water side or the side of the slope?
Well, it's the side where the doorway, where the, sorry, I thought that was the east side.
Yeah, on the water side.
Yeah, it's water
So
side.
not the side where the slope is, where the hill is.
Sorry. Which
Because
side?
earlier you said on the slope side, but you're talking about the slope of the roof, I guess.
Along the slope of the roof.
Okay.
And I think it's the east roof.
Okay, so the amendment worded, seconded by Mac. Any discussion? Councillor Schell.
A question about a designated building and having skylights on the roof on the public side. Do we have a policy? I thought we did, that you're not actually supposed to put skylights on heritage designated properties on the part where the public looks? Or is that not that big a deal?
being this one isn't in a district, we don't have sort of set policies as far as skylights go. It would be great if we did. We are looking at it from an impact perspective. So this is a fairly low-profile building. I would caution putting skylights on the largely publicly side of that ridge. If these, at least these units that they're proposing sort of half resemble vents and they're coming right out the ridge, they're less, I think if they were reduced in height, less impactful. If skylights are proposed, I would encourage them to be on the west slope, because that would be a little less obvious to because the front of the building is the east side of the building, which is where the park is, which is where the main entrances are, which is the more visible aspect. So why we don't have specific policies, that is our recommendation based on good planning practices.
Councillor Schell?
Thanks, that's what I thought, and I'm actually much more content with what's proposed, and I agree with reducing the height. Just it creates that, as we've learned at the prison, celestry windows, I think. But they look, you could think they were chimneys, or the old-fashioned skylights that you'll see in houses that literally did sit on the top of a roof to give some light to a staircase. So I'm content with the staff's suggestion. I'd prefer not to see skylights, but if it's sort of allowable, we'd go with it. But I suspect even the architect would prefer the little tops. Thanks.
Hi, I just get the mover and seconder for clarification of the rationale. It's not self-evident to me what heritage principle is improved by moving the skylights forward.
It removes those boxes on the roof. I mean, yeah, I'm not really bothered by adding boxes that were not there, but skylights that are just flush with a slope are much less noticeable than an elevated box sitting above the roof, and give much better light to a staircase coming down.
Does it say in the wing anything about it being flush with the roof?
No, but
because I missed that.
It says along the slope, which implies that it's parallel and close to the slope. But you know, it's only a suggestion, so it's up to the architect what they prefer. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. These are sort of helpful suggestions to giving options to the architect. Yes, Catherine. Did you want to say anything about this?
This building had I believe it was a lift shaft extension. At one point, you can see it in the old photograph that's in the Heritage Impact Statement, would be the southeast end, southeast corner. So there were projections through this roof.
Okay, that's great. I got it off there because really, while we're deliberating an amendment, I mean, we have to decide as a committee whether we want to put in the amendment or not. And, you know, questions about the context are okay, but I guess it comes down to what we think is the best thing to do. So this, as I understand it, adds an option, but isn't binding. Mac, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I think it's good as an option. I don't have a big problem with the boxes either. Just in terms of whether it's on the east face or the west face, in actual fact, walking along the street and so forth, I'm not sure it'd be that visible from the east face because of the height, but from the north side, if the skylights were to go there, I think they'd be much more visible because you're coming down higher. Is there a rear elevation of this in the plans? From the parking lot side? All right, okay, yeah. See, the skylights would be much more visible from that side than from the south side if that's the way they went. So I'm fine with it being on the east side. I'm also fine with the boxes slightly lower.
We're looking at these computer renderings just for these are notoriously inaccurate. They're computer renderings. There's lots of inaccuracies that I'm noticing in each of these renderings. But for the configuration of what we're talking about, they're helpful. Catherine, do you have any comments on the amendment?
Support it. I bring them where they are now.
So the amendment adding an option to the condition number 3. Could you read that out, please, James? Number 3 starts by saying the 2 elevated skylight boxes shall be omitted from the plans or reduced in height to be at least 50% in order to be as close to flush with the roof profile as possible, semicolon.
Alternatively, skylight along the east slope of the roof may be installed.
So that last bit James read is the amendment. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that carries. Moving on, we've got the recommendation as a whole now amended. Any further discussion? So I need sorry, it was moved and seconded at the very beginning. We're going to call the vote on the entire amended recommendation. All those in favor? All those opposed? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Good luck with your work.
Just ask a question for clarity. The doors on the front of the building, is one of the conditions to put a door on the front on those 2 openings? Because that's a big problem for us if we have to do that.
Mr. Chair, we were going to suggest that perhaps softening that condition to make it a consideration might be more appropriate. As I mentioned, it from a heritage perspective is one way or the other, but we were considering it from a safety perspective, having that or an open cubby for people to sort of hide in and sleep in and might not be appropriate.
I understand that's condition 4, correct? Condition 4. So there's number 4, installation of new metal-clad wood windows, and there's installation of new wooden exterior doors, number 6, with partial glazing is the scope of work. And then condition 4 says a period appropriate exterior door. So what are we talking about here?
So, Mr. Chair, we're talking about condition number 4. They're referring to the alteration number 6 is the new doors throughout the building. That's not specifically to the vestibule. So we were referring to condition 4, which says a period appropriate exterior door be installed in each of the 2 existing east-facing door openings for the proposed vestibule entrances. And it is our recommendation that perhaps in light of the discussion, it might be better to say instead of shall be the owner shall consider or something of that nature.
So as it reads right now, what we just passed, when it goes to council, will be a binding recommendation that the door shall be installed. And staff is recommending that, making that conditional, so making that optional instead of mandatory. So if we want to do that, we'd have to recondition or reconsider what we just passed and amend it. Moved by Councillor Schell, reconsideration requires a 2/3 vote to pass. We're at exact quorum right now, so we will need 4 votes in favor for this to pass. Oh no, sorry, it's 4 votes in favor. It's the same either way. All right, all seconded by Catherine. All those in favor of reconsideration? And that passes. So the motion's back on the floor as if it hadn't been passed. And we now need a motion to amend condition number 4. Moved by Councillor Schell. Do you know the wording of the amendment?
Anne knows the wording.
We'll just take a 1-minute recess to get the wording right.
A period appropriate.
And maybe wait for our 2 other members to come back before we vote on it.
Okay.
Like I said before, the intent of the amendment, as I understand it, is to change it from mandatory to optional. So the wording suggested by our director is James?
So it would read, a period appropriate exterior door shall be considered in the installation of each of the two existing facing door openings for the proposed vestibule entrances.
So shall be considered in the installation of. Is that okay? Okay, so that's what's been moved. We need a seconder. Seconded by Dawn. Mac, and the recommendation of staff, Councillor Schell has moved an amendment to change the wording of condition number 4 so that the door is optional, not mandatory. So a period exterior door shall be considered in the installation of each of the two existing east-facing door openings. That's number 4, if amended. Right, it sort of sounds awkward, doesn't it? It should sort of, sorry, one moment. Sorry, the clerk just pointed out that the wording's a little problematic. It's a friendly amendment for clarity. It's just trying to get the wording that's more clear. Okay, so read out how the syntax should read.
So now it'll read, consideration shall be given to the installation of period exterior doors in each of the two existing east-facing door openings for the proposed vestibule entrances.
Wording, the consideration of at the beginning of the clause. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Pretty obvious what we're doing. All those in favor? And that passes. Any other proposed amendments before we vote on this again? Okay, so the motion's been amended once, then it was passed, then it was reconsidered, then it was amended again. So now we're going to vote on a recommendation that's been amended twice. It's already the same mover and seconder? Okay, you don't need a new mover and seconder, so we'll just vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. Good luck. Next item is 92 Sydenham Street. Sorry, I skipped something. Where am I? 6. There it is, 7. 130 Johnson Street, Kingston Public Library.
So 130 Johnson Street, Mr. Chair, is the central branch of the Kingston Frontenac Public Library that was approved last year for a significant facelift overhaul, and they're currently in the process of doing that. It is designated under both Part 4 and Part 5. It includes an early stone building, locally known as the Bishop's House, and an addition from the 70s built by Sorensen and Inglis, who are well-known architects in this area. The proposal before this committee is to install new signage, one new sign along the Johnson Street facade. The sign is before you. It is a vertical sign. I believe they call it a cabinet sign. It'll be a fabricated aluminum material with illuminated letters and numbers on a blue background with white lettering. Staff have reviewed this application against the policies of the district plan and recommend approval. We had no significant comments from the agencies and no significant comments received from Heritage Committee members, so that we are recommending approval of this application, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ryan. Just a quick question, I'll go first on this one. Is this subject to any kind of sign policy the city might have?
These signage, Mr. Chair, I believe will require a sign permit through our building department. And because it is a city facility, I believe it's subject to our facilities accessibility design standards as well. And I'm under the understanding that they comply to both.
So all of that would be captured under condition number 1, where it says the building permit and any required encroachment permit, any required permits really is what you're saying. Staff understands that. Without an amendment, we don't need to spell out the fact that all required permits. I guess it's a given that the city, on a city facility, all required city permits will be obtained. Okay. Any other questions from members of the committee? Oh, sorry. This is a Part 5 application because it's Old Sydenham District. So we're back to Part 5. You see, if the chair is even getting confused, how confusing it is. So comments that you put into Dash, were they accurate or were they not accurate? Seeing none. Yeah, that's good. Members of the public? Anything? No members of the public wish to speak, unless the applicant would like to sort of give context to the work. It's fairly self-explanatory. Anything? Okay. Then we go to members of the committee have an opportunity to add comments to the file for council's consideration. Don.
It's made some points about how easy it would be to read the sign, and I'm glad the Mr. Crothers replied. I was sure it would not be obvious, which is the best way to orient these letters, but they've done the work, so I'm okay.
Okay, any other comments to add to the file? Seeing none, we will need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Councillor Shell, seconded by Mack. So this is that Heritage Kingston supports council's approval of the following, and it's the installation of the sign and the conditions. All right, all those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Good luck. Next we have 92 Sydenham Street. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess this is Part 5 Old Sydenham District.
That is accurate, Mr. Chair. "92 Sydenham Street is part of the Old Sydenham Heritage District. You'd recognize this address. We did a number of approvals for this property just recently, earlier this year or last year. It is just south of Johnson Street on the west side of Sydenham Street. This is the current property. It's half of a brick double house, semi-detached, that sorry, I got my pages all mixed up. So the alteration before you is to replace these steps. Am I missing a page? Oh, no, okay, sorry. The application is to replace these wooden steps with concrete stairs clad in Kingston limestone and a wrought iron railing in a pattern that resembles the pattern in the window, you can see here. The design of the size of this structure will be exactly the same as what is there. They are not permitted to encroach any further into the city road allowance, so it will be exactly what is there. There will be a small opening on the one side to access a window that is behind this building, behind this structure. There's also a proposal to do some landscaping in the front yard, which has been supported by staff, as it is largely within the city road allowance as well. So there are a number of comments that were provided by city staff that were circulated. The building department did note some concerns with the preliminary design of this the structure from a building code perspective. But we have confirmed that the design can meet the requirements, and they will further review that at building permit stage, but I am sure that there won't be any substantial changes to the design plans that are before this committee as a result of that. Engineering department did note a couple of comments regarding the fact that the landscaping is on city land, and just caution that if it needs to be removed, it will be. And we did circulate to Heritage Kingston, who provided comments, and there were no substantial concerns noted. So, Mr. Chair, we recommend approval of this structure, and our recommendation is there. Thanks.
Thank you. Part 5 process. Dash comments, were they accurate? Yep. Members of the public? It's okay. So we have opportunity to add final comments. Don?
Issue of the gap between the treads and the footrail seems to be still left open. My understanding, well, I remember an email from Ashley saying, yes, there's a big gap bigger than 4 inches in diameter, and so it would not meet building code, but you seem to think it is going to be okay. So what's the status of that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the provided revised plans to confirm that that distance has been met, that they are actually less than the 4 inches, and they are more than it's been satisfied. We don't have building code, at least to Ashley's standards, and she will confirm that at application stage.
Well, I understand inspector comes around with a 4-inch sphere and will try to push it through the gap, so I hope it.
Any other comments? Okay, we need to vote on the recommendation. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Don. That Heritage Kingston supports Council's approval following alterations. There's just the porch reconstruction of the landscaping, removal of the front staircase, and the 4 conditions there. All those in favor? Opposed, and that carries. Mac, you can come back now. We're on to number 9. Village of Berryfield, so the Berryfield Conservation District, heritage permit. So this would be another part 5, but in the other heritage district, not Sydenham, in Berryfield again. In case you're wondering about the order of the agenda, usually in chronological order of when the applications were received.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a property in the Berryfield district. It's a little unusual given that it's a vacant property in the district. There aren't too many of those. And the proposal before the committee is to construct a new single-family dwelling and detached garage. The property is just on the south side of Wellington Street, between George and Drummond. It was severed, it was created through severance only a couple years ago, 2016. And its value to the district is its future use. So the building that is being proposed needs to sort of conform with the district plan and be designed as such a way that it doesn't take away from the district, which is why it's before us today, before you today. This is the lot as it looks recently, just a vacant lot between 2 held houses. The one on the left is a heritage building, although it was relocated onto the site many years ago. This isn't its original location. And the one to the right is a non-heritage building that was constructed, I think, in the 90s. So the key characteristic of the district is its rural village character, and these are some of the defining features of that as outlined in the district plan. The small lots, the minimum setbacks from the street, the scale and massing, the pitched roof, the cladding, and front porches and the like. So the application before the committee is to construct a new single-family dwelling. It's a single-unit dwelling with a prominent front porch, 2 stories tall, with a pitched roof and a central gable dormer. It's to be clad in horizontal wood siding in brown tones with an off-white trim and dark grayish colored standing seam metal or asphalt roofing. The windows are simple vertical slider sash windows in a 1/1 pattern, which is common in the district. The detached garage is a 2-bay garage, approximately 900 square feet, with 1-man door and a double window on the west side, 2 vehicle bays on the north side. It's a low-pitched hip roof, again, cladding and roofing to match that of the house. So conceptual plans were provided by Bruce Downey, and our heritage impact statement is also provided in your agenda package. So in terms of our review, we largely support this application. We note that new construction is to be compatible with the heritage value and attributes of the district. However, it should not attempt to replicate the historic styles, but instead be a contemporary interpretation of historic forms and styles. Details such as the traditional massing, cladding, and roof pitches help to allow the new construction to blend in well with the district character and thus minimizing its impact. While complementing the district, new construction should be clearly a product of its own time, and details such as the corner windows and the decorative frieze board and the gable end barge board detailing will help distinguish this building in subtle ways as a new build. So the dwelling and garage have been designed in a manner that satisfies the objectives of the HCD plan and respects the character of the existing buildings in the district. And we support this application. So we did circulate this. The agencies that responded didn't provide any significant concerns that changed this recommendation. Heritage Kingston was also circulated and have not expressed any concerns. There are in your agenda package a letter of concern from the Berryfield Village Association, as well as a number of and a response from the agent, as well as a letter of concern from the abutting neighbor. Again, that was responded to by the agent. And there are a number of letters of support that were submitted for this application, which I believe are part of your addendum that was provided this morning. So, Mr. Chair, we recommend approval of this, and I'll put up the motion for you.
Thank you. Again, this is part 5. There was one member who made comments in dash. Dawn, were they accurately collected? Okay. Now we have members of the public. I see one over here. Go ahead.
I'm not sure. I'm here to answer any questions. I'm very comfortable with this particular design. That I certainly appreciate all of the comments that were made. Oh, my name is Bruce Downey. I'm with Hughes Downey Architects. I'm responsible for that design that you're evaluating today. The owners have been actually quite flexible, wonderful to work with in regard to creating a building that fit with the village. But I wanted something distinct so it didn't appear like a replica of some sort. But in saying that, I do appreciate the comments that were made by the representatives of the Berryfield Village Association and Don's comments as well, and as well as the neighbor who, Neil Dukas, who is interested in what's happening on the east elevation, the wall on that side. I would say that it's always difficult to evaluate a building that is of this day and age fitting with a community of another day and age, but I believe that this one is modest in its treatment on the street and sympathetic to the buildings adjacent to it, and I'm more than content with the way it settles there.
Thank you. We got another member of the public here. Mr. Dixon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to Mr. Downey. I would certainly support this. Just one little question. The houses around it are clad in siding, and this one is also siding in plan. So that's a better fit than, say, if you were to do brick or limestone or whatever. So that's the rationale there. It fits very well in scale with the houses around there. I have some friends who live in Berryfield, so I know the area quite well. And I'll just say all the best going forward.
Thank you. Now, members of the, unless there's any other members of the public, members of the committee get a chance to make final comments. Don?
I just have a small issue about the height, and I'm glad it's been made explicit. I can't, in the conditions, I can't remember the exact wording in the district guidelines, but in my submission I said, well, and I think it's important, height is important, and often these new buildings somehow end up a bit higher than we thought they were going to be. So in my comment I said the height of the building should be no higher than the average of the two neighboring houses, but in the staff's condition, they should say it should be no higher than one of the houses, which is actually a bit lower because the street is sloping. So it's a somewhat more stringent condition on height. And I wonder, is that intended? Is it really consistent with the guidelines? Is it a concern to the applicant?
Yeah, actually, for the purpose of that, the applicant's right here, the agent. Is that a concern? The condition as printed by staff there? Maybe I should read it out. Where is it? The peak of the roof of the new dwelling is no taller than the peak of the roof of the adjacent heritage building at 412 Wellington Street.
The condition that's expressed by staff is consistent with the district plan's interpretation. Due to the slope of the hill, it does appear that the new building to the building adjacent to it is the dark blue building is higher, quite a bit higher actually, and so that's, I understand Don's comments. It would certainly benefit us because we're going to be removing rock in order to achieve that particular height if a little flexibility was granted in that regard.
So I guess I'll just have staff confirm that this was an intended in consequence of the condition that's in the package, that 412 Wellington Street, that's the way the plan reads and that's the correct context for the roof line.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. The policy is, or the condition is written explicitly as the wording in the district plan states. It distinguishes between heritage and non-heritage buildings, and the intent is that the new building does not tower over a Halo heritage building. So the building, as I mentioned earlier, the one on the left is a heritage building, the one on the right is not. So that's why the condition is worded the way it is.
Okay, so did you get Don's comment about the height? Are they captured? Okay, so council will have that comment, and if it's nuanced and you want, I certainly understand the nuance, but you may want to reach out to some other councillors if you want to make sure they get the nuance. Any other comments?
It's a question. It's regarding the garage. Can you tell me what the doors are going to be made of? They look like a modern door. And the garage looks huge in comparison to the size of the house. So I'm just questioning the reason for that.
That's a question for staff. Staff's the ones that wrote the conditions. This is the staff's the one making the recommendation to council.
Mr. Chair, the The garage, the size of the garage is, there are no policies in the district plan specifically to the size of the garage, the massing. It is to be located behind the house, which it is. It is to be a lower profile than the house, which it is, and it's to be clad in a complementary material to the main house, which it is. So I believe the doors are, what, aluminum, like a wood aluminum clad, is that? I'm looking at the applicant for confirmation.
Well, maybe you could get at that by just saying, is there anything in the district plan that speaks to the composition of the garage doors? It's a very detailed question, but I guess if we can answer it right now, that'd be great. Otherwise, the member is forced to make a decision without that question being answered. Sorry?
Section 453 of the district plan talks about design considerations for garages and auxiliary structures, and it does not specifically mention the type of doors that are required on this structure.
Any other comments?
Is it able to ask Mr. Downey, thinking about those doors, or what material he's
How
thinking
about I put it to the committee? All those in favor of asking the applicant the composition of the doors? Okay, and that passes. Mr. Downey.
Such support. That's the doors are going to be painted. The owners are not fussy. They haven't chosen a particular kind of door. They could be a panel door. They could be a slab door, as I'm showing. I tend to think that the more patterning you put in a door, the more it stands out. So I've chosen a flat door, and it would be painted like the walls. So it will tend to blend in with the walls of the building as opposed to stand out. But it would, since it's painted, it could be a steel door, it could be a fiberglass door, it could be, it's more beneficial to have an insulated door than not. But the design you see is a flat sectional door that is intended to be painted. Does that answer your questions?
The question that you have as a member is related to whether you support council's approval of the permit based on the conditions written by staff. I know it's very restrictive. I know it's frustrating that you might have a suggestion, but the only way you can get your advice to council is by way of a comment. Okay. There is, seeing no other comments, we need a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Moved by Mac. Seconded by Councillor Schell. That Heritage Kingston supports council's approval of the staff recommendation. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. We're up to the 11th item and last out under this section of business. It's actually this building, 216 Ontario Street. Oh, you're right. Sorry. No, I didn't miss it. That's right. It was that one was withdrawn at the request of the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one.
Excuse me just one sec. If I leave you... Okay, I'm going to have to excuse myself.
Patty, coming back? Okay, so Mac, you can leave, but you're the last one that can leave. If anyone else leaves, the committee meeting is over, and anything left over comes to next month. And yeah, so let's keep this as short as possible.
One.
Let's keep moving.
This is the last one.
Yeah.
This is this building, to City Hall. It's designated under Part 4 and Part 5. It has interior attributes. It's a National Historic Site, and it's located in the Market Square District. What is before you today is a request by the Historic Sites and Monuments Board via our Cultural Services Department to update these two plaques on the bottom plinths of these columns, the red one on the right and the one on the left, to look like that. The Historic Sites and Monument Board would like to provide us with a plaque to honor George Brown, who is the architect of this facility, and to update the current one to meet its current standards and to balance the two plaques on the front of the building. The one that's being replaced is an old Heritage Canada Foundation one that was provided to the city when they did their restorations in the 70s, and it will be added to the city's civic collection, as I understand it. And there's our recommendation. We support this alteration.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, need to move, oh, sorry, members of the public? No? Because it's part 5. Did anyone make comments under dash? Anyway, as a chance to crack them if you did. Otherwise, we will go to final comments to add to the file. Seeing none, we need to vote. We need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Catherine, seconded by Dawn. All those in favor? And that carries. That's business. Well done. Good job. We did deal with all the important aspects without feeling too rushed, I hope. Working group reports. There are a couple. Normally, this would be where you could address anything it concerns in those reports. You can see those reports. You've had them in your package, 321 to 331. We do need a motion to receive them. Right. So starting with the Cultural Heritage Working Group, you'll see the minutes from March 13th. Can we have a motion to receive all the minutes? In the same motion? Okay. So we're going to have a motion. It is to receive the minutes from March 13th, Cultural Heritage Working Group, to receive the minutes from what's the Heritage Property? 238. Sorry, the March 6th Heritage Properties Working Group, and February 13th Heritage Properties Working Group, and February 6th Heritage Property Working Group, January 23rd Heritage Property Working Group, and yes, they met multiple times because they're working on the Kingston Penitentiary designation and a lot of work. Okay, so this omnibus motion will also include the appointment of Megan Kerrigan to the Cultural Heritage Working Group. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Schell, seconded by Dawn. Any discussion? Yes.
Yes, has been a lot of work. Thank Ryan and the committee. And you're all very glad we're not doing it here in public, because it's been hours and hours and hours doing the heritage attributes of the Kingston Penitentiary. And Ryan's been very patient with some very, very, I would say, convoluted discussions. And Ryan's had to go onto his Google Drive every so often to get into definitions. It's been very precise, very careful, very long, and thanks very much.
That's great. And I'm sure it says in the working group, but maybe staff could just confirm where we're at in that work with the Kingston Pen attributes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to reciprocate and congratulate and thank the working group for all their time and effort in that, because it was a monumentous task, and as you see, we have 4 meetings to get through that. The attributes of Kingston Pen, the work group has gone through them in detail, and we've updated the list, which spans many pages. The next step in that process is to turn it back to our consultant, Andre Scheinman, to look at the current draft of the bylaw and make revisions to.
One sec, Ryan. Catherine, before you go, we need to vote on this. Just hold that thought. All those in favor of this motion? Opposed? And that carries. As soon as Catherine leaves the room, the meeting is over, but we can have unofficial conversation. Thank you so much for all the work on the Kingston Pen. Look forward to the next report.